166th session of the Queen's University of Belfast Literary and Scientific Society! What did I say? Did I say 166th session?
Yeah.
Well, we have to do it all over again, don't we, Hugh? No, it's the 169th session. My apologies. Travelled back in time for a moment there. So welcome one and all to this meeting this evening on this, once again, dark and slightly drizzly evening. We are here this evening to discuss the motion, as all of you are surely well aware, that this House would support the Israeli government. But before that, we have a few items of House business to get through. So to begin with, just a few announcements this week, you'll be glad to hear. Very few indeed, by the looks of my list, which doesn't quite seem right, but nevertheless. So first of all, as some of you are aware, we just today sent 8 fine women of this House down to, once again, the foreign hostile land of Dublin, Ireland, to Trinity campus to debate in the Trinity College Dublin Women's Open. They are debating as we speak. We do not yet know the results. Council, don't correct me. So yes, in any doubt, or in any case, let's give them a round of applause for their efforts, I believe. I believe it is the single largest team that we have sent to a Women's Open since the founding, so hooray for that. Otherwise, on Saturday, we have our previously mentioned film night. Once again, we're watching
what time is it?
Dead Poets Society. That's an excellent question, Miss Will. An even better one is, where are we going to be? We're not sure yet, but it's definitely going to be. Yes, we have a number of different ideas for where exactly we could go. We will have location and the time out by tomorrow evening at the absolute latest, because at that point we'll just pick somewhere. But otherwise, yes, if you're available on Saturday at some time, please do come down. It'll be much fun. There shall be pizza and drinks and whatnot. Otherwise, that's not an announcement. That's for another section. So yes, I believe, Mr. Dunn, unless you can think of any other announcements than what happened last night. No?
Unless you want to chat about what I said again.
Yes, okay, that's fair enough. So, after consulting with the honorary elect members, because they are, working now out of the country, blah blah, they have very tight schedules, we have settled on a date that we hope will work for everyone. Now, as you're aware, this new academic year is a bit of a headache. So normally, yes, indeed. Normally we would have the conversazione in May, but the way it's working this year is that at the end of March we go away for 3 weeks of an Easter break. We're back into that for 1 week of class, 3 weeks of exams, and then 3 development weeks, which I am quite certain there will be no one attending, and then it's summer. So we're going to have to hold our conversazione, which for those of you who don't know is our annual formal, in March. The date that we have at the moment is Tuesday 20th, which is the final week of term. Now, deadlines may be an issue that week, we're not entirely sure. Most of the council appear to be okay with that week. However, we of course only do a select number of subjects and whatnot. So if everybody could take a moment over the next week or so to try and find their specific course calendar for exams and whatnot, and just maybe send me a message if you have a whole load of deadlines in that final week, that would be great. I know that English students, at least in, I think it's second year and first year, I think someone else said, have like deadlines in mid-April, so they're fine with that. As a computer scientist, I'm fine with that final week. But we want to try and get as many of you there as possible. We have booked a larger room than usual due to the turnout at the Christmas dinner. It's called the Old Billiards Room, and for those of you who don't know, it's in the Ulster Reform Club. It's a very nice building down in the city centre. But yes, more details on that will come, but keep an eye out, try and figure out if that last week works for you. Otherwise, the only other announcement I have is just a little thing that I had mentioned last week. So as those of you who were here last week and who are on Facebook and whatnot will hopefully be aware, the Literary helped the Gown to organise a pub quiz that occurred just last night in order to try and get them back into print, to raise the money to get them back in print. It's worth prefacing that unfortunately, it was organised on very short notice and there were a number of things that went wrong. So the turnout was a fairly mild, fairly awesome 127 people! Yeah! So yeah, the way that went was basically the Literary, I think Ronnie is okay with me saying, we're fairly instrumental in the organisation of that. As I said, 127 people turned out. It was quite a sight to see from a whole range of societies, including like Kiara and Steve, players, musical theatre, counter players, etc., etc. And of course, the Liverpool gang. And yes, on the night we raised approximately £350. And so between that and a couple of other bits of money that had been already promised to the gang, we raised enough to get them back into print. So yes, well done to us. Thank you very much to everybody who attended. It was very good indeed to see everyone there. And yes, I believe that's all of the announcements I have for now. So, to read the minutes of the 15th, is it? Or the 14th ordinary meeting, the topic which was "This House would experiment with drugs," I would like to invite our beloved Secretary, Mr. Peter Dunn!
Good evening, all. The 14th ordinary meeting of the 169th session of the Literary and Scientific Society took place on the 18th of January and was attended by 60 members. The President started with announcements, as he always does, and they went on for far too long, but he did declare that the Literafic was going for the Society of the Year. I mean, I think we'd already had that as a given, but it's good to get it official. Ms. Kira Swale then began a session of private members' business with an item concerning nuclear testing. She asked the House for their opinions on the 2 nuclear misfires which had occurred in the world recently. Ms. Kira Campbell responded by saying that she was horrified that it took a whole 38 minutes to rectify the mistake in Hawaii, and said that such occurrences as this are indicative of how unstable the US is currently. A typically chilled response from Mr. Sullivan was then had, who pondered what kind of idiot could place the buttons in a drop-down menu right next to each other. He then, after getting even more annoyed, suggested that whoever idea this was, he's taken outside and shot. Our external convener, Mr. Hugh Dobbin, then brought up an issue that has infected the interweb. That of Tide Pods. He asked the House what this trend says about us as a species. Mr. Harry Adair responded by saying that the real problem about this Tide Pod craze is they aren't cooked, and they're often served without any garnish. On a similar note, Mr. Edmund Doherty said that the range of Tide Pod consumed should be expanded, naming Purcell and Downs as a possible alternative. Training officer and honorary life member Mr. Livetta wasn't worried, and she commented that the population needs culling anyway. President's questions were started by Mr. Patrick McKenna, who asked the President why he was wearing his lapel pin upside down. The President, of course, said he was being deliberately subversive or some rubbish. Mr. Sheikh Glasgow then asked the President's opinion on the newly proposed student centre, and somewhat predictably, no opinions were given. Mr. Matthew Sullivan then asked the President if he could be any drug, what could he be? His immediate response was the most potent, but then he thought with a more reasoned answer that it would be Vicodin, as it's the drug that Dr. Gregory House uses in the hit TV series. Miss Kira Campbell then asked the President if he would eat a Tide Pod. He unequivocally said he wouldn't, but in the same unequivocal manner, he declared that he wasn't hesitate to make somebody else eat one. Mr. Edmund Doherty then asked why in every sentence the President advertises some product or another. Apart from the President obviously being the dirty capitalist that it is, he comments that he couldn't answer as it will probably breach one of his non-disclosure agreements that he signed. The President then asked the House if they had any opinions on the fact that South and North Korea were operating under one flag at the Olympics. I don't think it's actually within the rules for presidents to ask a question during President questions, but I think we can let him off this once. Mr. Holcombe Sparrow remarked that it was simply brilliant that the two countries diametrically opposed in ideals could come together in this manner. Mr. Sheikh Glasgow, however, was much more critical and reasoned that it was merely a smokescreen to divert attention of North Korea's dangerous regime. The President introduced the motion for the evening, which read, "This House would experiment with drugs," and took a vote on prior opinion, which read 18 in favour, 19 against, and 7 abstentions. Starting the way off was Mr. Patrick McKenna. He began his speech by framing the context of the motion, stating that one has to act if the House was a legislative authority. I think you'll find, Mr. McKenna, that the House is indeed the legislative authority. He then went on to define exactly what he meant by experiment. Criminality, he argued, was the central source of the issue. and he vowed that allowing people to experiment with drugs would be the next block to fall in societal progression. Opening the case to the opposition was our esteemed, but always late, internal convener, Mr. Matthew Bryson. In an understated start to his speech, he proclaimed drugs kill, and mused why anybody would want drugs, as there is no drugs that can do what you can do, Mr. Matthew Bryson. And I can testify to this claim. He went on to insist that students are precious as avocado on toast, and thus shouldn't be exposed to the dangers of drug experimentation. Continuing the argument for the proposition was Miss Kurzweil. The focus of her speech was on the medical benefits of experimental with drugs. She outlined the benefits that cannabis can have in a variety of conditions, despite it being illegal in several countries. To conclude, she reaffirmed the notion of the first speaker that criminalisation was part of the problem, citing the Just Say No campaign in America made the drug abuse even worse. Second up for opposition was Mr. Edmund Doherty. Similar to Mr. Bryson, he reinforced the notion that drugs are indeed bad, and he also maintained that it was simply unwise to indulge in drug experimentation, considering the lack of knowledge we have on the effects of particular drugs. He then concluded in a bizarre but passionate manner, where he recited the whole of the Choose Life speech from Trainspotting. I'm not sure if that...
correction.
At the end.
I'm not sure if the irony of the speech was completely lost to me, but we had all the speech anyway. Concluding for the proposition that was made in the speaker, Mr. Orkin Sparrow. He argued the perception of a drug experimenter is one of those let's go to shine, get wrecked, and take illegal drugs in the toilets of McDonald's kind of types. I'm sure there's loads of us among here tonight. He proceeded to dissuade the House of this perception and highlighted the huge medical advances that had taken place due to drug experimentation, including the eradication of smallpox. Concluding for the opposition was Mr. Harry Adair. In rebuttal, he argued the idea of self-medication the proposition was propagating was glossing over the bigger issue of mental health. He argued that yes, it is indeed a very human thing to seek pleasure, but highlighted the cost of such pleasure overcome and thus implored the House to vote with the opposition. Questions were then heard from Mr. Russell Nairn, Mr. Ali Raja, Mr. Matthew Sullivan, Miss Sheila Dixon, Miss Killian Thornton, and Mr. Leo Kilkenny. A vote was then taken on speakerability, which read 5 for the proposition, 9 for the opposition, and 25 abstentions. I'm not even going to say 10 minutes was read, because Edmund obviously has something to say, so stand there.
Okay. As I said you were going to in the council meeting on Monday to the President, it was not the Choose Life monologue from Trainspotting, it was the Choose Life monologue from T2 Trainspotting, all about Brenton's recovery from heroin, which is why it worked.
I believe we can make a question in minutes.
We can. I mean, it's debatable to say it worked, but
quotation marks.
AKA
but as ever, I'll take that on board. With that in mind, may I take the minutes as well?
Aye. Thank you very much. Since we're done. Sadly, just due to the nature of how this works, I didn't have a chance to have a word with you there. There doesn't appear to be an SD card in that camera, so yes. I don't know how we're going to take photographs tonight, but we'll figure something out. Yes, so we have private members' business now. We have a few that we need to deal with first. So, yes, I'm not entirely sure because I can't introduce them. So, Mr. Bradley, would you mind handling that first one there? So, Mr. Bradley, do you have an item of private members' business for the house?
No.
Stand and read out the first one.
Yes, I would.
You would like to extend a...
I would like... I can do this myself.
Okay, good.
I would like to extend a motion of congratulations to Professor Ian Greer, who is the new Vice-Chancellor and President of Queen's University of Belfast.
There we go. Yes, so for those of you who have not heard, Ian Greer, Professor Ian Greer, I believe, is the current Vice-Chancellor of Manchester University. Is that correct?
Deputy Vice-Chancellor.
Yes. Has been appointed the new Vice-Chancellor and President of Queen's following Professor Patrick Johnson. Would anybody like to say anything about that before we actually move to the vote? Mr. Doherty?
As I said to the people next to me, he looks a lot like Michael Gove, which is...
Mr. Captain Gallagher, HLN?
Yeah.
Actually, I was going to say this to the President's questions, Mr. President, but seeing as we have Professor Gallagher in the room, I was actually going to ask Professor Gallagher if you had any comments on the person in question yourself. I'm not familiar with him.
Professor Gallagher, would you like to say anything?
Well,
Oh, nice.
I don't want to say very much. Manchester University is a very fine university with a particularly strong Vice-Chancellor, Dame Nancy Rothwell, who is an extraordinary leader of higher education, so I would have great confidence that anyone who works with her would reflect some of the values that she proposes. I'm told he's a very ambitious man. He has been in Manchester, he's been in Liverpool and a variety of other places, so yes, I'm waiting to see what's said. And we'll have a medic followed by a medic and a little bit like that, but yeah, maybe I don't know him personally, but looking forward to seeing him arrive in August.
Thank you very much. Anyone else like to say anything about that? No? Okay, can I get a seconder to that motion? Anyone? Seconded. All those in favour of extending a motion of congratulations to Professor Ian Greer on his appointment as the new Vice-Chancellor and President of Queen's, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Okay, all those against say nay.
Nay.
All those abstaining say nay.
Nah.
One nay, two mes, and the rest in favour. So that carries with a significant margin. So thank you very much for that. See, this next one, I don't know if there's anyone. Oh, Captain, you should know how to pronounce these names. It's not an Irish thing. You remember
Sorry, am I meant to read this out?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Congratulations to you.
Motion of congratulations to Conor Keneally and
Kylie.
Kylie. I don't know.
I know, right? See, this is the thing, your last name is quite unusual. I think it's Linthicum.
Sorry. I know what this is. Yeah, okay. Kylie Linthicum on their marriage.
Yes, so Conor Keneally and Kylie Linthicum are former members of this house. They were members, I think, from the 163rd or 4th until about the 166th, at which point they left university and have lives. So yes, they are the first, as far as I'm aware and as far as I've been informed, members of this house to become betrothed. I'm pretty sure, does betrothed mean married or engaged? Engaged. And then go on to be married. So, yes. So, yes, does anybody want to say anything about that? Anyone have any comments on Little Rickens getting married? How terrifying is that?
That's nice.
That's nice. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Nairn.
On the topic of Litterifkins getting married, Mr. President.
Mr. Nairn, I waited so long for this day. Yes, 1,000 times yes.
Unfortunately, we're in Northern Ireland.
That's right.
When are we going to have the first letter epic, Keely?
Yes! I'll tell them to get right on it. Oh, God! So, yes.
Are we sure we haven't?
Oh, yes. Can I get a seconder for that motion then? Seconded. So, could all those in favour of the motion or of extending the motion, congratulations to Mr. Conor Keneally and Miss Kylie Linthicum on their marriage, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. All those against say nay. All those abstaining say nay. Excellent, the motion carries unanimously. Excellent. Congratulations to them. They shall be informed. And there is one final item that we have to do. Sorry about all this prearranged stuff. So, as some of you may have noticed, this ancient and august society is lacking something quite important. And the council realised this a few months ago and attempted to rectify this problem, but couldn't quite find the right thing to fill this hole. And so, one day, whilst I was wandering through the Lanyon, I spotted, for those of you who don't know, the founder of the society was E.L. Godkin, and he has a plaque out in his honour, out in the Blackmount Hall. I spotted that plaque, and I noticed something on it that I'd never seen before. Most of us are familiar with the line that says, Edwin Lawrence Godkin, first president of the Literary and Scientific Society, and so on and so forth. But there's a little thing at the bottom. And so what the society has been lacking, in my opinion, is a motto. But we can't just have any motto. We need a proper, good old-fashioned Latin motto. At the bottom of the Godkin plaque, there is inscribed the words, and I'm going to butcher this pronunciation, I apologize in advance, sapere auda, spelt S-A-P-E-R-E space A-U-D-E, which is one of those nice Latin phrases that there is a definite translation for, and it means dare to be wise. So I brought this up with council, we discussed it, and the council was quite happy to use this as the official society motto, and so we voted on it and we passed it. But before it is officially taken up, I would very much like to pass it by the House. So I will slightly break with parliamentary conventions and introduce this motion myself, just for the sake of ease. So, indeed. So the motion that I'll be putting forward is this House would adopt Sapere Aude as its official motto. Would anybody have any comments on that? Not touching anything over there. So, yes, Mr. Doherty.
Mr. Yeah. Only once you learn how to say it properly.
Sapere Aude.
Yes, I support it now.
There we go. Mr. Sullivan.
Does anybody else think it sounds exactly like what somebody would put at the bottom of a Rick and Morty copy pasta?
Dirty Wise is a perfectly noble thing. We should go with it. Anybody else have any comments? No? In that case, I'm going to say, Mr. Bradley, you have officially introduced that motion. Sure, let's go with that. Would anybody like to second the motion? So, all those in favour of introducing Sapere Aude, dare to be wise, as the official society motto, please raise your hand and say aye! Aye! All those against say nay! Abstaining say meh! Excellent, the motion carries unanimously! Mr. Nairn, please stand. So, I imagine this will... No, you go that side, you go that side. I will imagine this may annoy some people, but nevertheless, we have had a new society pop-up banner commission because the current one is rather... There we go. Did you kick that as well? There we go. No, the current one is rather, well, just poor looking in my opinion. So Mr. Bradley and I put our heads together and came up in the late hours of like last Friday morning with this design. I hope you find it appealing. I will not set it on the desk. I was going to try that, it would go horribly wrong.
Just swivel up.
So I present them to you, the new society pop-up banner.
Mr. President,
Mr. Mayor.
how awkward would it have been?
I trust this house, I trust its members. And more importantly,
It's a facade, democracy is a
so there we go. I'm just going to lower this right now. Are there any other items of private members' business? Mr. Dobbin.
Recently, Mary Lou MacDonald was appointed, or rather I should say coronated, to be the leader of Sinn Féin. What I'd like to put to the House is what that indicates in regards to Sinn Féin's internal party structure, how it's organised, and furthermore, if they think that Jerry Adams being ousted as the leader of party has any, what the implications will be for that in the party, be that in its structure or polling or policies.
Thank you, Mr. Dobbin. Any comments on that, Mr. McSparrow?
I would just like to quote on Dintna from this week's Give My Head, please. Just because Jerry's resigned doesn't mean he's still not in charge.
I suspect a similar system shall operate after this year's AGM. Mr. Glasgow!
In regards to the internal structure of Sinn Féin, I think it, perhaps not coincidentally resembles the structure of a certain army council. Talking about Mary Lou, just in response to what Mr. Dobbin said, Jerry Adams wasn't ousted. He says he's left the stage, but I don't think he really has. Mary Lou might provide some different leadership, given that she is the first sort of prominent figure in Sinn Féin not to come from a background of the IRA. She's from quite a wealthy area in South Dublin. That could have some effect, I think, if she was allowed free rein to lead the party as she would, but I think Mr. Adams will still be controlling things from behind the scenes.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bryson, there's a seat up here if you want. Any other comments on that, Mr. Murphy?
Well, I think it's more reflective of the general state of Irish politics, north and south. There's many party leaders who didn't come to power for an election, but basically sort of like earned that sort of reputation beforehand, and then through that was basically their kind of justification to then be passed on to be leader. So, for example, the UUP, Robin Swan was unanimously made leader. Naomi Long in the Alliance Party was unanimously made leader. Like, there's examples like throughout parties in Irish politics, and I think it speaks more to the nature of Irish politics than necessarily the nature of Sinn Féin internally. Although I do think that the reputation that Sinn Féin's internal structures have for being quite authoritarian, you know, I think that is probably a legitimate reflection of reality, but in this particular instance, I don't think it's necessarily fair.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Anyone else? Yes, good sir.
We all know it's not going to change anything because Ian Paisley's been dead for years and he's still leading the DUP.
Hey! Very good, sir. Very good. I'll take a final. If anyone no, Mr. Mayor.
Right. In a piece of news that may come as a surprise to many people, UKIP still exists. And I'm wondering what the House's opinion is in regards to the leader of said party, Mr. Henry Bolton, recently getting a...
sorry, is this related to the Sinn Féin one?
No, as in... Oh, I thought this was new.
No, I wanted the final point on the Sinn Féin one.
Oh, I'm sorry then.
Mr. Doherty, and then we'll take Mr. Nairn.
I think the main issue with this is the fact that Sinn Féin now is supposed to be the more liberal of the two main parties, and the idea of, as Mr. Dobbins says, that their leader can just be coronated is terrible, and that the person who I think should have actually taken this might be the head of Labour students who is in the room, and I'd actually like to throw this over to him as fellow members to hear what he has on the idea of someone not being elected leader.
Dear me, putting the poor fellow on the spot like that. Sorry, you don't feel the need to stand, but if you'd like to, by all means.
I'm not sure what I'm recording.
I think Mr. Doherty just generally wants your opinion on matters, seems you have an unusual perspective.
I would say I don't really know enough. Sorry. I would say I don't really know enough to comment on the Sinn Féin.
There we go. That's very good. Very sweet. Okay then, thank you very much for that. Mr. Nairn, you were saying something about UKIP.
Hello, I'm back. Alright, so in a move that would surprise many people, UKIP still exists, etc., the joke. But the leader of that party, Mr. Henry Bolton, recently had a vote of no confidence passed against him by his fellow party members. However, he's basically said that he's going to refuse to resign until they kick him out effectively. So I'm wondering if people in the House have any opinion on that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nairn. Anyone have any thoughts on that, Mr. Hickman?
Guys, it's UKIP. They've fulfilled their purpose. I think that it's only going to be a matter of time before they collapse it upon themselves and become a kind of monument of history, a bit like the BNP.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hickman. Mr. Patton?
I can only really say one thing to summarise my opinion of the UKIP situation. Ha 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 ha.
Thank you very much, Mr. Patton. Miss Williams?
With the whole girlfriend matter, I found it quite funny. Like, if you guys read her racist and disgusting messages, they argued against this by saying they were taken out of context, even though she was saying stuff like black people are horrible and stuff like that.
Okay. I was very worried that I was going to have to find you there, but that's
really?
It. Well, just if you had a sworn, I think I might have.
No.
I'm very confused after last week. That's basically Also, I'm just very confused. Mr. Bradley.
There's something that Mr. Den mentioned that everyone just sort of took as being okay, but I was like, hang on, what? A vote of no confidence from UKIP? People whose previous leader was like, if Mr. Potato Head took loads of E's down the back of how did he get a vote of no confidence from them? How dreadful must he be?
An excellent point. And one final point from Mr. Mackle.
I think it's funny that UKIP had a democratic election to elect a leader and decided that they don't like the result of that election.
Thank you very much. We will, yes, I imagine we want a hearty round of questions at the end of this, so we'll move on now to President's questions. Mr. Sullivan.
Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. Sullivan.
If you could be any group which has had their homeland occupied by foreign which group would you be?
So many to choose from. Fine, I'll say Ireland. I know it's what everybody wants. that's true too. Also the
She resigned.
Also the Literature, but mainly Ireland. Ireland, am I right? Hey, there we go.
I have lots of Irish friends.
Are there any other questions? I'll go with Mr. Bradley.
Mr. President, this is referring to something that was said last night at the very successful game pub quiz. I'm just going to question your wording of a certain thing you said during the night. Why did you refer to the Litterific as your homeboys? Why was it in that moment you just thought,
Yes. So I'm rather distressed that what I thought I had discussed with you in private, you've now deemed to bring up.
It wasn't private. You said it over a microphone to 127 people.
That's true too. So let me just say that the alcohol fumes got to me. The bright lights were flashing in my face. I didn't know where I was. And yes, if I wasn't a terribly drunk master student, I would have gone down this afternoon to Tesco and bought myself a bottle of port, which I would then use as a fine, because I did utter some rather unprecedented language. So I do apologise to the House for referring to you as my homeboys. I honestly don't know what came over me. I believe that the HLMs have gathered, the presidents are convening, the trust is no longer trusting in me. They are coming for me. I'm sure they shall soon make me pay for that utterance. But nevertheless, I apologise. Are there any other bits of questions, Mr. Doherty?
Are there any fines that need to be paid from last week?
I believe there are, Mr. Doherty. Would you please come forward? No. Mr. Doherty owes us a fine for swearing and also going 2 minutes over time. So yes, thank you very much, Mr. Doherty. The finest bottles of tawny port and ruby port. I don't know what these are, but I shall set them over here on candy corner and apparently alcohol corner. So yes, I do believe no other hands are going up there. No, I'm not.
You forgot to mention about one team that did very well last night.
That's right. It's also worth pointing out that at that going pub quiz, the winning, seeing as how we organised it, I might as well say, the winner of the grand prize was the team from the Philosophy Society. And also then we had a very strange situation in that there were 3 teams tied for second, and so those 3 teams were Queen's Radio, Ailish gives a wave, yeah, Queen's Radio. Sci-Fi, Maria gives a wave, yeah, Sci-Fi. But also, the Litterific, yeah! So, I believe Edwin was on the winning team, Ulkin was on the winning team, and was there anyone else who's currently here? I don't recall.
No, our other teammates are so terrible, they cannot be here.
Shameless resigned. So yes, congratulations to you. Totally wasn't great. So yes, we shall now move on to the vote of prior opinion. So, you don't need your membership cards for this. This is just an informal vote. So the motion this evening is this House would support the Israeli government. All those in favour of the motion as of right now, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mr. Secretary?
Yeah.
4. All those who would oppose the motion, please raise your hand and say nay.
Nay.
Keep them up, keep them up, keep them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, Mr. Secretary?
21 will go.
And all those who wish to abstain, who have no particular opinion as of this moment in time, please raise your hand and say nay.
Nay.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 30, 31, 32, Mr. Secretary? 32. Ah, figure out, so could you quickly... Yes, Professor Gallagher, could you read that back?
Yes, so at this point, the number in favour of the motion 4, the number opposed 22, and the number abstained 32.
Oh, so at this moment in time, the abstentions have quite a large margin of victory. So, as you may have noticed this evening, sitting in the big chair there at the back, we have a very special guest chair. The guest chair this evening is Professor Tony Gallagher. He is a current Professor of Education at Queen's University Belfast, former Pro Vice Chancellor, and has been a member of the Litterific Trust since its founding, and the founding, of course, then of the Society back in 2011. If you look at your order papers, you will see his name at the very top left corner, little list of trustees, Professor Anthony Gallagher. So yes, we had a similar Israel motion 3 years ago on the 166th. It was this House would boycott Israel. Mr. Robert Murphy sitting there spoke of that as well. But also guest chairing that was Professor Tony Gallagher. So we are incredibly honoured to have him back. And I will now cede the floor to him to give an introductory address. Give it up!
Thank you. Yes, it's always a pleasure to attend a meeting of the Liderifics. It's always a pleasure to act as guest chair, though why you always get me to chair some of the easier debates. Well, also, it was good, last night we had a meeting of the Trust, and I was very pleased to hear at the meeting that the Society is in such rude health and is having such a successful year. There's lots of good things happening this year, and the continuing growth of the Society since it was reformed is something that you should all be very proud of. We mentioned earlier that we had an announcement earlier today of our new Vice-Chancellor. I think it's appropriate, entirely appropriate, that the most venerable of all the student societies are meeting today in this room, because earlier today in this room the Senate of the University confirmed the name of our new Vice-Chancellor. So there's just a connection between yourselves and the continuing history of the University in that appointment. You're all too young to know, but whenever the Northern Ireland peace process emerged into the public and into blinking into the glare of the cameras in the late 1990s, at the same time peace processes were going on in the Middle East and in South Africa. And at the time, those of us who were doing research and work in this area made very close connections between all three peace processes, and have followed all three peace processes over the years. They all have taken slightly different courses. We all have had different levels of success or failure. We all have tried to deal with a series of challenges. None of them have achieved full success. All of them are still fragile, and all of them are still facing significant challenges. But one of the things that's important about all three of these processes, and we'll hear more about, obviously tonight, about the situation in the Middle East, different views on that. All of them have tried to find a balance between three different elements. On the one hand, they've tried to find a balance between the security of the citizens, all of the citizens in the country, alongside the rights of all the communities and interests that live within those societies, and thirdly, some sense of social cohesion or some sense of a common good. Each of the three places have placed a different priority on one or other of those three elements, but all three elements continue to be a challenge and continue to be a difficulty in the three jurisdictions, and trying to find a balance between the three is still a key and important issue in all places. When we're talking specifically about the issue of the Middle East and the actions of the Israeli government and the relationship between the Jewish community in Israel and Palestinians in Israel and in the territories, the West Bank and Gaza, and all the debates around whether we're going to have a two-state solution or a one-state solution, or what form all of these things might take, it is important to remember that sometimes people who criticise the Israeli government are too easily labelled, or too quickly labelled, as anti-Semitic. At the same time, we need to keep in mind that Europe has a long and dishonourable history of anti-Semitism, and we cannot simply forget that either. Alongside this, we should remember that those who criticise the Israeli government sometimes appear to set a set of standards that are not applied to other countries in the same way. Sometimes there is an impression that the Israeli government is thought of uniquely and judged uniquely, rather than be set aside other countries within the world. So there's things to be balanced there in the way we think about it, talk about these issues as well. It's also somehow or other fitting that our debate this evening is bookended between two events, both of which carry an important resonance for some of the issues that we're going to be talking about this evening. One of those events is a Holocaust memorial. January 27th was the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz by Soviet forces. And that was the date that was chosen for the global commemoration of the victims of the Holocaust. And obviously that's happening in a couple of days. And that's an important event to remember because of what happened and what happened to the Jews of Europe and all the consequences that flowed from that. On the other hand, just a few days ago, you will have seen the appalling pictures of the expulsion of Palestinian representatives from the Knesset whenever they protested against Vice President Pence, reiterating the decision of the Trump administration in Washington to set aside decades of diplomacy in a decision, an announcement around the city of Jerusalem. So there are pressures on both sides on this issue, things we need to keep in mind. And when we talk about Israel, when we talk about the Middle East, often it's a topic and a discussion which provokes a high level of emotion. And that's okay on one level, because emotion can be based on passion and a sense of hope and a desire for change and a desire for good things to happen. All too often, emotion can descend into anger. So in our debate this evening, let's focus on emotion, yes, but let's focus on the passion to do things well, rather than the anger that leads to bad things happening. And given that you have a new strapline for the society, let's dare to be wise in this debate as well. Thank you. Okay, so the first speaker to speak for the proposition is Mr. Perry.
Mr. President, Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to stand before you today to propose the motion that this House would support the Israeli government. My friends, over the course of my speech I will tell you why, due to current unsettled conditions in the Middle East, that we, the Western world, must continue to support our Israeli partners. I will draw on the scourge of the Jewish people, possibly the most vilified minority in history, and how we have a moral obligation to address current challenges. And rather than abandoning our Israeli friends, we should work towards common solutions. In 2015, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu travelled to South America, visiting Colombia and Argentina, becoming the first Israeli Prime Minister to visit Latin America. After 70 years, the world is embracing Israel, and Israel is embracing the world. Israel has always been in search of one thing: recognition. Although oftentimes that recognition is not there, UNESCO declared the Cave of the Patriarchs a Palestinian memorial site. That is not fake news, that is fake history. Israel and our country have shared values. We both hold open and fair elections, we both respect the freedom of speech, and we both try and provide opportunities to our young people. And I believe that these shared values should come with a shared friendship. However, these values that we hold dear are under threat by Islamic extremism generated by ISIS, and Iran that is moving closer and closer to nuclear capabilities, and a Middle East that has never witnessed as much civil unrest as it is witnessing today. I believe Israel, being the only liberal democracy in the Middle East, is a beacon of hope in a sea of tyranny. Israel has made extraordinary advancements in the fight against terrorism. In recent years, the Israeli government has provided intelligence to its allies, the United States and the UK. This intelligence has saved countless lives and prevented numerous attacks. Syria has starved, cast and murdered millions of its own citizens, while Israel has provided healthcare and food to the victims of that very same organised brutality. And yet, the World Health Organization criticises Israel. My friends, the world is now coming to realise what famous investors like Warren Buffett and innovative companies like Intel realised many years ago: that Israel is leading the world in technology, science and healthcare. From the invention of the drip irrigation system in the 1960s to the invention of ReWalk, a bionic walking system for paraplegics, it is phenomenal to think that a state that is 3 times smaller than the island of Ireland has contributed so much to modern technology. Friends, it is an accepted norm in international relations that every sovereign state has a right to decide its own capital city, even in cases when states have changed their capital. China in 1949, Brazil in 1960, and Germany in 1999. Only in the case of this Jewish state has this unalienable right been denied. This is why we must recognise Jerusalem, a city that is home to the Western Wall, as the capital of Israel. This decision will help to erode the dangerous fantasy that the Jews can somehow be wrestled from Jerusalem. From the sack of Jerusalem in 1000 BC by King David to the 6 million Jewish martyrs of the Holocaust, this city has been home to Jewish history and heritage for 3 millennia. We should marvel at the Israeli people, who just 3 years after walking in the shadow of death, rose up to form their own state. Jerusalem today is a pluralistic city, a city where religious freedom is upheld. In a Middle East plagued by intolerance, an Israeli Jerusalem stands out as a beacon of tolerance and freedom. In the words of Israel's first Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion, the attempt to sever Jewish Jerusalem from Israel will not advance peace in the Middle East. I was astonished in December last year that the UN Security Council, a council that should focus on international cooperation, did not talk about the funds that Iran provides to terrorists. It did not discuss a strategy for defeating ISIS. It was not about how we, the international community, should hold Bashar al-Assad accountable for murdering his own people. No. Instead, they focused on lambasting Israel, the only free democracy in the Middle East. And I do want to discuss the elephant in the room, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And leaders of the region of Palestine have rejected, time and time again, efforts from the Israeli government to further the peace process. On that point, I also want to refute the notion that the Palestinians are the eternal victims in this conflict. Last March, an Israeli family of 5 were murdered in their homes by a group of Palestinians while they were sleeping in their beds in the Sabbath day. This is Jacob, age 10. This is Shira, age 8. Their brother Noah was also knifed in his bed. He was 11 months old. 11 months. It is time to stop this savagery and come together to form a solution. By withdrawing support from Israel and by not addressing current challenges, as the professors noted, a solution can never be found. My friends, Israel is an ancient people, a proud people. In their 4,000-year history, many have tried and failed to destroy the Israeli people. Israel is a country surrounded by those who would see its destruction. The terrorist group Hamas hides behind civilians and incites violence in order to promote its political ideology. This is something we, in Northern Ireland, can all draw parallels with. I am proud of Israel's past and confident about our shared future. We must continue to support Israel or else any hope of salvaging prosperity in the Middle East will be lost. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for introducing the opposing motion. Our first speaker for the opposition is Mr. Jack Padden.
Honourable Chair, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to open the case for the opposition. I'm going to start by addressing some points that commonly come up in Israeli propaganda. I will then move to discuss the issue of the West Bank and then some of the finer points of the Israeli system of government. Our second speaker will then speak about the situation in Gaza and Jerusalem, and our final speaker will be summarising for us. Now, we believe for the proposition to successfully make their case, they must persuade us of 3 things. That supporting the Israeli government will improve our security, that supporting the Israeli government will increase the stability of the region, and supporting the Israeli government is the morally right thing to do. One of the things I did when I was preparing for this debate was watching a lot of Israeli propaganda. And I know that's not everybody's idea of a fun night in, but I will spend my time somehow. And one of the points that came up several times, and a couple of different variations, was this idea that the first speaker touched on, that Israel is a barrier to the spread of Islamic extremism. This point falls apart for a number of reasons, including the fact that in the information age, it's impossible to act as the barrier to an idea, but that's not really relevant to this debate. The more important point for this debate is the actions of the Israeli government have done the exact opposite. For all you need to do is look at Gaza, where the decade-long blockade has left 2 million residents with limited power, limited healthcare, and limited clean water. I just want to throw in a quote here from a man named Robert Piper, who was the UN humanitarian coordinator. I see this extraordinary, inhumane and unjust process of strangling gradually 2 million civilians in Gaza that really pose a threat to nobody. Now, I'm sure some of you don't see how this relates to Islamic extremism, so I'm going to use a wee bit of a theoretical example for you. Say one of the senior boys in Al-Qaeda or some other such hateful organisation wants to radicalise someone, all they have to do is show them footage from inside Gaza and say, this is the ally of the West, and say, this is the ally of the United States, this is the ally of the United Kingdom. And if they're willing to put up with their ally doing this, what must they think of you? What must they think of your culture? What must they think of your religion? And sure, it could be a waste of time trying to get the heads of people like these, but we should not make it this easy for them. Another reason we should not support the Israeli government is their consistent violation of international law. In particular, Article 49 of the Fourth Geneva Convention, which states the occupying power shall not deport or transfer part of its own population into the territories it occupies. This means that the 328,423 settlers in the West Bank as of 2011 are in violation of international law. And this isn't just my opinion, though my lawfully legal opinion is admired throughout this room, I'm sure. It's an opinion that's been voiced by organisations from many councils within the UN to the International Red Cross. And I can almost guarantee that by the end of this debate, we will not have heard a justification for those settlements. Now, this isn't even the only issue in the West Bank. From border walls that funnel anyone who needs to cross over for work into checkpoints where they have to queue from 3 in the morning, to stories of settlers throwing stones at Palestinian children on their way to school, to the scenes of Palestinian teenagers clashing with the Israeli Defence Forces. This forces us to ask an uncomfortable question, one that sways on the edge of relevance to this debate. Is Israel an apartheid state? I'm briefly going to discuss the nature of the Israeli government. It's not relevant, but it's important later. So the cabinet is made up of ministers from each of the major parties, with their proportion being decided by the number of seats their party holds in the, I'm going to butcher this, Knesset? Knesset. Thank you very much. I'm telling you for one reason in particular. That reason is called the Jewish Home Party. They are a modern Orthodox, far right-wing party led by a tech millionaire. He calls himself a billionaire, he's not actually. To give you an idea of some of their policies, they introduced a bill that would allow the government to compulsory purchase land from Palestinians in the occupied territories. They've said on numerous occasions they will not negotiate with the Palestinians in any form, and they wish to annex part of the West Bank. This is the point where that information at the start of this becomes relevant. They received enough seats where they got a cabinet position. And for them, why is this relevant? So, you would think someone who holds such uncompromising views towards a section of the population they control, that the government would casually push them into a job, or maybe they can't do much damage, agricultural affairs, maybe some small education post, something like that. Nope. They got head of the Ministry of Justice. So, in summary, the actions of the Israeli government have increased the threat of Islamic extremism posed to their allies, violated international law with such blatant disregard that seems to be emblematic of their generally cavalier attitude to human rights, and a system of government that allows a party
Sorry, which examples of international law have they broken specifically? Could you give specific examples?
Yeah, it was Article 49 of the Fourth Geneva Convention, and there's other UN examples that other people are going to be using later.
Thank you.
You made me lose my place. Very good. With apparent dislike for the Palestinian people to be put in charge of getting them justice. This is the point where I have to ask two questions of varying levels of importance. The first is, how do we see ourselves? Are we the type of people who side with the boot and help pile on the weights of people already beneath its heel? Or are we the type of people who side with those stuck underneath it and try to help them out? The second question is slightly less serious, and many members of this room have already read it because I wanted to be sure I wasn't breaking any rules. But given the recent pattern in this society of speakers receiving sponsorships from various organisations, and the history of the Israeli government providing funding with groups they agree with, I have to ask the question, how much of the proposition getting for their speeches? Thank you very much. I hope these votes for the opposition That is literally all I have left to say. Thanks.
We have a number of main speakers tonight, so I give them special attention. And the first of these will speak now, Mr. Tobias Vincent, who will speak for the proposition.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. To begin, I would like to pose a rhetorical question. What makes a state good? Some will say a good state is one that provides for its people. Others may argue that a state's primary responsibility is in the protection of its people. Perhaps a few would argue that a good state, first and foremost, is a democratic one. Whatever your categorization, are there truly any of us here who would argue that Israel, and as a result the Israeli government, does not provide these things? The rule of law, an open and stable democracy, universal suffrage. These are principles that the Israeli government has held up year after year under a system that even the most die-hard members of the opposition must recognise to be free and fair. And what of those beaten down, politically voiceless Arab Israelis the opposition will inevitably brandish to show how broken the Israeli system is? Well, you would have to ask the new Deputy Supreme Court Chief Justice, Salim Gibran, a man born in Haifa, then Mandatory Palestine. He, like many other Arab Palestinians, has recognised that the system allows for him to have influence and, through the well-functioning democracy, change it as they see fit. But what are the military campaigns, the suppression of dissent, and the seemingly gung-ho style of dealing with internal and external ethnic and cultural divides? Well, to me that sounds an awful lot like an average night out or policy agenda for the United States. This is a country that no one seriously is talking about not supporting, and that, for all our humorous fascist Trump jokes, is still regarded as the modern-day leading democracy by most. Why then would we not support Israel?
On that point.
Yeah.
Are you saying that because the United States does bad things, it's not bad that the Israeli government does bad things?
Not at all. My point that I'm trying to make is that actually, and I'll come on to this later, Israel is surrounded currently by sort of many countries that are in the grips of Islamic jihadism and radical extremism. By contrast, the United States is surrounded by Canada and Mexico, and yet sort of responds to any sort of civil dissidence with a massive clamping down and an iron fist. Now, I'm not here to say that you should like the Israeli government when it sends in the riot police and armed trucks to the West Bank. This should not be accepted without criticism. But to not, generally speaking, support the Israeli government, a sovereign, democratic state, even when mistakes are made, seems incredibly dangerous precedent to me. Dangerous because of the volumes it speaks to the world. The West seemingly no longer has the stomach, nor the resolve to support the other legitimate democracies of the world. By not supporting Israel, we discourage would-be allies and just further reinforce authoritarian propaganda that democracies will not stand up for each other. The Middle East is not a stable place today. One only needs to glance across the endless articles on suicide bombings and modern-day jihadism to recognise there is a massive amount of hate and anti-Western sentiment currently present.
On that point,
I won't take it just yet. Israel, by comparison, is a good, democratic place with a good government and the highest standards of living in the region.
On that point.
Not just yet. To not support a government whose anti-terror and pro-Western democracy agenda is ingrained with its very psyche seems, at least to me, like a very foolish notion, and one that risks alienating one of the West's staunchest allies, opening it up to external and potentially Russian influence. Russians in the Middle East, I know, hardly a novel idea, but today they are a credible threat to the region's security, both through supporting the Assad regime in Syria and in the increasingly chummy relationship between Netanyahu and Putin. In a hypothetical situation in which British and American support, including weaponry and logistical supplies, cease to go to Israel, where do we genuinely think that the Israelis would turn? The answer to the ex-superpower, Russia, a country which benefits from instability and political chaos in the Middle East. After all, with American interests all tied up in trying to win back Israel or stabilise the region, this leaves Eastern Europe and the Baltic states just that little bit less safe. To withdraw support now from Israel, then, a country which has not forgotten the British role in its formation, would be to shoot ourselves in the foot and sacrifice ourselves an increasingly important geopolitical ally. There are many valid historical and ancient reasons why the nation-state of Israel should exist, but let me just present you with the facts. It is a fact that on August 31st, 2017, while Israel hosted the Eurobasket 2017 Group B games in Tel Aviv, ISIS launched a massive assault in southern Raqqa. It is a fact that in February 2017, while Saudi Arabia's capital, Riyadh, was being struck by Houthi missiles, just a further development in its proxy war with Iran, Theresa May met with Benjamin Netanyahu to discuss free trade and strengthening university ties between Israeli and UK universities. These examples illustrate the need for a stable country like Israel in the Middle East, in a time when some parts of the Middle East are just so extreme and dangerous. As far as the proposition is concerned, there is no better country for us to be lending support to in the region. Who else can we support, if not Israel? Saudi Arabia? A country possessing a human rights record so bad that international politicians are no longer even asking about the 47 executed on the 3rd of January 2016. Many of their crimes still remain vague. How about Iran then? A country which recently appeared on the brink of civil war due to conditions in which its own citizens could not afford to buy eggs. Even Lebanon, a country now thought to be partly free, as of 2013, is still plagued with instability, and in the same year saw a massive spike in armed conflict between its population and one of its larger northern cities, Tripoli. No. The answer to bringing stability and democracy to the troubled region remains clear. We must wholeheartedly support Israel and the democratically elected Israeli government. Her people deserve no less.
Thank you, Mr. Vincent. Can we have another round of applause for a very successful maiden speech? We have a number of maiden speeches this evening, and the next from Mr. Hassan Nawaz is also maiden speaker for the opposition.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really honored to be here tonight. So I hope that you will emerge very enlightened at the end of this evening. Before I say my points, I also have to comment on the things the first speaker for the proposition has said. He raised the point of the freedom of speech. I won't go back to the history. I'll just give the example that our chair has given, that when the Vice President of America came to the assembly in Israel, then the members of the Palestinians were kicked out. That was appalling. That was really appalling. Where was the freedom of speech? One of the aspirations of the international community is that the conflict should be resolved by peaceful means, but Israel's preferred method of dealing with the conflict is through violence, aggression, and war. The Palestinians are in no doubt that this state, which was established on their land and their expense, has treated them appallingly from the moment of its birth. Let me clarify you all that this debate is not about the record of other countries in the region or elsewhere. This debate is not about the Iran or Syria or ISIS. Tonight the topic is just about Israel, so better you should not find your way out by comparing it to the others.
On that point,
yes.
I think it's very narrow to take that this debate is just purely focused on Israel. I mean, there's a load of other factors why we should or shouldn't support Israel. Israel is a country that's constantly under attack from Iran, from ISIS, and that's why they take an aggressive military approach. We do not agree that they have a right to defend their own land against ISIS and Iran and other aggressors.
Isn't that Israel that has captured his neighbor lands? So I'll explain the information. I could focus on numerous things. I could focus on how the United Nations Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination has described Israeli policies towards its own Palestinian citizens and those Palestinians in the occupied territories. Those policies have been described by the committee as a form of segregation and systematic discrimination. I could focus on how Israel has nuclear weapons and yet has never joined the Treaty on Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons and in fact bans international inspectors from its facilities. But instead, I'm going to focus on one issue in particular, and that's Israeli settlements. That have been created in the occupied Palestinian territory since 1967. These settlements are illegal and against the international law. Why are they illegal? Just let me quote the United Nations Security Council Resolution number 452. It states, the policy of Israel in establishing settlements in the occupied Arab territories has no legal validity and constitutes a violation of the 4th Geneva Convention. Israel has used violence in its dealing with Palestine throughout, beginning with the expulsions, continuing to the occupation of the Palestinian lands, to the denial of the rights of the refugees to return to their country, to the denial of the rights of the equality to the Palestinian citizens of state. Let's talk about the 1967 territories. What has Israel done? It has stolen the land, it has stolen the lives of the youth of the Palestinians. No thanks. It has stolen the education from children of the Palestinian people. You have to look at Gaza. What a state it is in. Besieged, a siege that is inhumane, that has strangled this tiny strip of land, this tiny strip which has undergone attack after attack by the Israeli army. Israel has unleashed full force of its high-tech killing not less than 8 times in last decade. Now I would like to enlighten you about the operations conducted by Israel in Gaza over last decade. The first operation is the recent operation, the Gaza 2008. The Palestinian casualties, 1,417. The Israeli casualties, 9. The source, Shin Bet, the Israeli security agency. And the second operation, the Pillar of Defense. The Israel killed the senior Hamas leader, Ahmed Jabari, who was the negotiator between the two sides, a permanent ceasefire. And the third operation I would like to talk about is the Protective Edge. That took place in 2014, and then the Palestinian casualties, that 2,300, and the Israeli casualties, 10. Now I would like to conclude my speech by just saying the quote of Desmond Tutu: if you stand neutral in the face of injustice, you stand on the side of oppressor. Israelis have been forcing out Palestinians from the land they have lived in for 7 decades. And the land grab is still continuing today with over 500,000 Israeli settlers today in the West Bank and the East Gaza, East Jerusalem. These settlements are a deliberate attempt to undermine the peace process. Israel knows it, the world knows it. If you keep on seizing other people's land, and these new settlements are still continuing right now, as we still speak, the prospect of peace and the settlement evaporates. So very sadly, I must conclude that there is no hope of Israel but its own withdrawing from the occupied territory and settlement. So I urge you all to reject this motion for the sake of humanity.
Another fine maiden speech, so let's give another. The next speaker is also the maiden speaker, Mr. Ryan Smith, who will speak for the proposition.
Mr. President, Chairman, and ladies and gentlemen of the House. Why should the House support Israel in the Palestinian question? The simple answer is that Israel wants to see peace with its Palestinian neighbours. We only have to look back in history to see examples of how Israel has traded and attempted to trade land for peace. Example number 1. After the 1967 war, also known as the Six-Day War, where Israel launched the first offensive against Egypt on the basis of an imminent invasion from its Arab neighbour. Israel captured the Sinai Peninsula and Gaza Strip, but instead of keeping it, it decided to return the Sinai Peninsula, which contained numerous amounts of natural resources. Example number 2. In 2000, at the Camp David summit, Israel proposed a Palestinian state, all of Gaza and 94% of the West Bank, with the talks breaking down over the issue of Jerusalem and the right to return. This is a clear example of a pragmatic and progressive attempt by Israel to establish peace. But what was this gesture met with? The Second Intifada, a wave of suicide bombs killing hundreds of men, women and children, resulting in an aggressive response by the IDF as they attempted to eradicate Islamic terrorists who purposely placed themselves in civilian territories to defend their missiles. In 2008, Israel attempted once again to establish peace, a full Palestinian state, 98% of the West Bank, including East Jerusalem as its capital, but once again the Palestinians rejected the proposal. But some of you would claim that Israel has no right to militarily occupy the West Bank. However, according to law professor Alan Derhardschwitz from Harvard University, that under international law, Israel, having been attacked aggressively by its Arab neighbour Jordan in the 1967 war, has every right to military occupation of the West Bank until a peaceful agreement until a peaceful agreement is established and terrorism from Palestinians is ceased. Now, I would agree with the opposition that the civilian settlements of the West Bank have been a barrier to peace, but are not the most significant factor that prevents a two-state solution that everyone would like to see. Hypothetically, if Israel was to withdraw from the West Bank tomorrow, it would be increasingly foolish, as it would leave major ports and airports in Tel Aviv open to Palestinian rockets. For example, in 2005, in another attempt by Israel to establish peace with its neighbours, it completely withdrew from the Gaza Strip, but once again this was met with thousands of rockets being launched by Hamas from the most densely populated area in the world. One of the most densely populated areas in the world. We will all agree that our country has the right to defend itself against terrorism, and the result of Israel reacting once again is the death of thousands of Palestinians, as Hamas uses to centre itself in places where which has high civilian presence, resulting in their death. If the Palestinians wanted peace, they would have rejected Islamic terrorists and Hamas. For example, in 2014, the UN stated that they found Hamas using public buildings such as mosques, schools and hospitals to shield itself from IDF strikes, causing hundreds of innocent Palestinians to die. If Israel didn't have to protect itself from these missiles, these deaths would not have occurred, Mr. President. To continue on from the proposition, and to address the first speaker, the other members of Israel is a democratic nation in the Middle East. It is ethnically diverse, with 1.6 million Arabs. 1.6 million Arabs reside in Israel's borders, with 83% being Muslim and the rest being Christian. They have full political rights and are elected to Knesset. Israel is a state where women have equal rights and gay people live openly. It is ironically the freest place for anybody in the Middle East to live. If Israel was really an apartheid state, would these things have occurred? Would it really be allowing its Palestinians full political rights? And that's why I ask you to vote in favour of the proposition.
That's the third maiden speaker in a row, and again, I'll ask you to give another round of applause. We'll now hear from Mr. Robert Murdoch for the opposition.
Okay, thanks very much, and thanks for having this debate. One of my first debates later, I think, was a similar one, so it's great to be back. I want to commend our main speakers from both sides, did an excellent job, so well done. I just want to very quickly summarise what's been said from the opposition side of the table, and then I'll take some of the points made by the proposition. We've made very clear certain particular issues that we think are hugely important and why we oppose this motion.
And those issues are, to summarise, the building of the settlements on the West Bank, which do contravene the 4th Geneva Convention, as the question that you pointed out. This isn't just anyone has said this. The UN Human Rights Council, the UN General Assembly, the International Committee of the Red Cross, and many other international organisations, including David Cameron, actually has said that these settlements are illegal under international law. But Israel somehow still gets away with flouting international law. I ask you, if anyone else did, would they get away with it? It's quite simply ridiculous. We've also mentioned the claim to Jerusalem on the grounds of religion, that Jerusalem, the Temple Mount, is the most sacred kind of place in Judaism. Well, all three Abrahamic religions could claim some form of religious legitimacy to the city of Jerusalem. Are we really going to say that because it has the most important place in Judaism that they have sole right to it? Or because it's kind of important to Muslims, it's their holiest site, they actually they don't get it? And if Christians, it's kind of important, but do you know what? They don't matter. Is that really? Are we basing? Yes, go on. I'll take the point. If you could be quick, please.
I'll be quick. Yeah, I just want to bring up the point of Israel's isolation. Now, what I've found from personal experience is that it's easier to convince a friend than it is to convince an enemy of your point. So perhaps then that withdrawing support to Israel is in fact undermining our ability to convince them of our perspective, and indeed making them feel more insecure and thus less willing to cooperate with our demands.
Well, I think it's an interesting point, but I don't think it works in this case. I think we look at the case of South Africa. It took direct action before anything actually happened. You can't. We've been trying to this policy of constructive engagement. Where has it gotten us? They're still building the settlements. This is a policy that has been going on for at least 10 years, more so, and the settlements are still being built. It's not that they were built and now they're stopped. They continue to be built. So the constructive engagement point, it just doesn't work. I would love it if it worked. It would make my life a lot easier, but it simply doesn't. Now, on the case, let me see, where am I? Yes, on the case of Gaza as well, what wasn't pointed out was the naval, sea and land blockade of Gaza. That still is in existence to this day. 6 nautical miles. A Palestinian fisherman cannot go out past 6 nautical miles. You cannot get out of Gaza without support. Without permission from the Israeli Defence Force or the Israeli government. So one of the main sources of produce, or one of the main resources in Gaza is fish. But there's very few fish within 6 nautical miles. You have to go out further than that. As anyone here who's a much better expert in fisheries than I am. So not only have the Israelis cordoned off Gaza inland, they've also cordoned off the sea and cut off a vital source of produce for Palestinian fishermen and for the Palestinians to get by. But I want to come on to a few points made by the proposition. And I want to take Jude's point. You said that Israel is leading the world in science and technology. Fair enough. It's definitely doing a good job. But where are many of those research is taking place? Many businesses are in the West Bank, in the settlements. So they're actually using land that is illegal under international law to advance this research in technology. Israel is leading the world in science and technology, but failing the world to uphold international law. And we've heard time and time again, I don't know how many times you heard, this idea of peace. Oh, well, the Palestinians rejected peace. And Ryan, you mentioned 1967, the Six-Day War. You mentioned the Six-Day War. Well, let's go further back than that. Let's go back to 1947 with the partition plan by the United Nations that I admit was rejected by the Arabs at the time. But the reason it was rejected by the Arabs at the time is because it gave 52% of the land to 30% of the population. So that 52% of the land was going to 30% of the population. That 52% of the land has continued to grow. I don't even know what the percentage is off the top of my head at the minute. So this idea, we start off at this point in 1947 that somehow the Palestinians have rejected peace. But when you have continual encroachment on your land, there's a quote I wanted to make, which is by Professor Avi Shlaim, and it says that Benjamin Netanyahu is like, here it is. Actually I can't find it, doesn't matter. He's like the guy who's pretending to negotiate how to divvy up the pizza while eating the pizza. That's exactly what is happening here. How can you anyone stand here and say that it is okay to negotiate peace when the continual act of aggression, which is exactly what it is continuing to take place?
On that point.
Go on that point.
So, the act of aggression is coming from the Palestinian side. So, if they're not the ones firing the rockets, then why if they didn't fire the rockets, Israel wouldn't respond. So, it's about taking.
That logic is based on the idea that there are two sides in this conflict. That is based on this idea that there is both kind of have done wrong, when actually the fact of the matter is that there is an aggressor and there is a victim in this case, and the victim is the people of Palestine. Now, I do not in any way condone the fire of rockets. I think it's wrong. Again, it would make my life a lot easier if Hamas didn't exist, but we don't get to pick and choose who's there and who isn't. And Hamas doesn't exist in a vacuum. Hamas is a response. It exists within a context of a brutal occupation, which is exactly what is going on. It is not a case of we fire rockets. The rockets are being fired because you're continually encroaching on Palestinian land. The settlements are continuing to be built, and East Jerusalem, which is supposedly, under the partition plan, was supposed to belong to the Palestinians, has continued to be administered by the Israelis. So this idea that the Palestinians, you said 2008 after Operation Pillar of Defence. Well, in Operation Pillar of Defence, the Israelis assassinated. I'll finish on this. The Israeli government assassinated the man who was actually taking part in negotiations for a ceasefire. When you go in and you attack the person you're trying to negotiate with, it is not a negotiation. And I'll finish by saying this. Nelson Mandela got it right. He said, "Our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinians." I urge you all, if you are in favour of international law and human rights, and if you believe in justice and equality, please oppose this motion this evening.
Last of a set of extremely fine speeches, so congratulations to all of you. And I hand to Mr. President to take this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Guest Chair. Let's get right to it. Are there any questions for the proposition? Mr. Glasgow.
The proposition has talked at length tonight about the successes of Israeli statecraft. A couple of years after the tragedies of the Second World War, the Israelis established a state and a stable democracy, one that fostered huge advances in healthcare, education, some of the best living standards in the Middle East, and this may be the case, but if we can sort of compare it to another state that was established comparatively recently in 1921, Northern Ireland, David Trimble has said that the Unionists in Northern Ireland built a strong house, but it was a cold house for Catholics. This is exactly the same case as Israel. They may have built a strong house, but it's a strong house for the Israelis and a cold house for Palestinians. One of the phrases that was sort of bandied about when the state of Israel was established, that it was, Israel was a land without a people for a people without a land. But there was people there, the Palestinians. And Israel today continues to be a cold house for these Palestinians, and I think the proposition needs to address that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Glasgow. Would like to take that, Mr. Vincent?
Yeah, okay, sure. So it's obviously a very, very fair point when you start talking about obviously the Palestinians being left out. And I don't think anyone's here to say that change can't be made. That then there needs to be progress. But when you start then saying, and as a result of that, because it hasn't been shared completely equally, and there's inequality in every society, just naturally. But when it comes to reinforcing that logic and then saying, then you should not support Israel, a country that is democratic, a country that has an open and stable democracy. That just seems like a completely sort of unfair conclusion to jump to. Just because something's wrong doesn't mean you should then effectively throw away and completely scrap the situation. I think that yes, more work needs to be done, but you can only do this through a democracy. And the current democracy there is an Israeli one, and it needs to be worked through in legitimate and legal methods.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vincent. Mr. Murphy, to respond to the opposition?
Yes, if I could just respond. If I could just respond by saying two things. The first thing is that your speech is entirely correct. That's it. I'm not going to get any more compliments here.
But the other thing I wanted to say is the response that you gave, while I think is an interesting one, the response is predicated on this idea that we're talking about if you replace the motion with this House would support Israel. But we're not. We're talking about this House would support the Israeli government. And it seems that the response to what you said is an adequate response if we were to talk about the existence of the State of Israel. But we accept that the State of Israel is not going anywhere. We need to work towards a peace that will have both the Palestinian and the Israeli people. We're not talking about a mass expulsion of the Israelis from their land. So I think it's important that when we are responding to any questions in this, that we talk about the policies of the Israeli government and the actions of the Israeli government, as opposed to responding by way of a challenge to the existence of the State of Israel. That's the only point I want to make.
Thank you very much, Mr. Murtagh. Are there now any questions for the opposition? Mr. O'Neill, Social Officer.
Thank you, Mr. President. For the opposition, I think something that has been skimmed over in debate and hasn't really been addressed is the historical relation with regard to the olive branches being extended to the Palestinian side, democratically being voted through by the people, and a failure of leadership on the side of the Palestinians, surrounded by Arab leaders who basically called them in to reject it and continuing chaos, which hasn't really been addressed by our side. I understand what you say about the land's 52%, things like that, but true, take the Good Friday Agreement. Do you think the Catholics are going to get all the land that was stolen from the plantation back? No, but we understand that things are the way they are and that a peace process has to take place and peace is the ultimate goal. And the second thing that I just wish to add to that was what happens whenever we withdraw support from the Israeli state. There are millions of people within that state who others surrounding them are paying for blood, and we also have the duty of care to these citizens. So whenever we do reject the support for them, what do you think will happen in that case?
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill. Who from the opposition would care to respond?
Yeah.
You still want to go? No, I don't. Mr. Murtagh, it is then.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I would like, is it possible to have a clarification?
Yes.
Just to clarify, you mentioned a democratic process in relation to a peace, some kind of peace settlement. I'm just wondering specifically what you're referring to, because as far as I can see, so far there hasn't been actually a democratic process of peace. There has been negotiations that have failed. So if you just want to, just to clarify that point.
Yeah, so for example, I can't remember the exact year, but basically there was sort of like a two-state solution suggested at times, and it was voted, it had the support of the Palestinian people, and leaders in Hamas and such like that were surrounded by leaders in Egypt, in Syria as well, who basically pressurised them to reject their own people's thoughts on peace and to pull out of talks and things like that, and that was led to continued bloodshed on that side. So it's like Sinn Féin, for example, pulling out of talks because IRA were stimulating the talks in such a way, so it's that comparison.
Okay. So on the point, I'm not exactly 100% sure of the time period in which you're referring to, but I think the point still has to be made here that when you look at the peace negotiations, take for example the Oslo peace accords, we see that the reason why consistent peace negotiations have failed, and I'm not saying that the Palestinian leadership are utterly blameless, because they're not. And actually, it's a huge problem, the failure of the Palestinian leadership, both in Fatah and Hamas. And as I say, it makes the Palestinian leadership, makes those of us involved in the pro-Palestinian movement, it makes it a lot harder for us. So on that point, I don't think they're blameless, but the point still remains to be made, which is that when you have the idea of a peace negotiation is, if Palestine was to withdraw from a peace negotiation, it's predicated on the idea that we start here, when actually we're not starting from here. Israel is starting from here, and Palestine is starting from here because of this act, what is an act of aggression, through the building of settlements in the West Bank, and the fact that they have imposed a blockade, land, sea and air in Gaza. So I actually think that the point is that the peace settlement needs to come from a place of, an actual place where Israel is interested in a peace negotiation. We see, for example, Benjamin Netanyahu, well, I'll give you two examples. The Likud manifesto in the recent election rejected any notion of a Palestinian nationhood. Now, the claim was on a two-state solution. This isn't the first time Likud and Netanyahu have been
Briefly, Mr. Murphy.
What?
Briefly.
Briefly, okay. It's not the first time that they have been known to reject or be subtly unsure about a peace negotiation. Netanyahu only a couple of years ago said only Jews have national rights in the land of Israel. And just recently, and I'll get this is the final example, just recently, Miri Regev, who's the culture and sports minister in Israel at the minute, was seeing a video seeing the Bifar Jerusalem fans who were singing burn down the villages, a football team that's renowned for its anti-Arab sentiment, and she was seen dancing and singing along with this. So that really shows you where the Israeli government actually stands in relation to peace. It doesn't care about a peace. It wants to get rid of Palestine off the map.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Mr. Perry, to respond?
I'm glad Shay mentioned Northern Ireland, because we look at the peace process, and Mr. Murphy said that the Israelis start here and the Palestinians start here, but when the peace process started, Ian Paisley and Mary McGuinness never thought they'd work together, and the unions started here and the nationals started here. I think since then, both sides have made considerable strides in bringing it to a more even playing field. So if we do what Mr. Murphy would say and withdraw support from the Israeli government, then what's stopping the Israelis going even further and the Palestinians going even lower than that? And there's a clear failure on the Palestinian behalf to control Hamas, and they have rejected talks on time and time again to come to a peaceful resolution to this. And Mr. Martin said that they are victims, but there's Israeli victims as well. These are victims, Israeli victims of Palestinian extremism, which I feel the opposition have failed to take account of. And there's one last point I want to mention, that's a power vacuum. We've seen what happened in the Middle East with the power vacuum. We've seen the rise of ISIS. We've seen what happened when Saddam Hussein was taken out, the rise of extremism there. So what would happen in Israel? It will not be a good thing if we stop supporting the Israeli government, because the Palestinian standard will get lower, and there's no one even stopping the Israelis from going even higher and doing worse things to the Palestinians. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions that are abstaining on the motion? That was very poorly phrased, but you get the point. Who's at the back? Anybody spoken? Yes, Ms. Daly.
These are points for both sides. As you said, that Israel was just a land for the Jewish and the Jewish only. I just wanted to point out that Palestine, during the time of World War I and after the Holocaust, Palestine willingly accepted around 700,000 Jewish refugees escaping from World War I and the Holocaust. And this is a massive number considering Palestine's Muslim population is only around 1.2 million. And there are around 700,000 Jewish refugees. And Palestine had no say in the creation of the state of Israel. So when you think about it, when you have no say in the creation of the state that's coming and residing in Palestine, it's just something to think about. Well, another thing that I wanted to point out is that there's no justification for these deaths. You have no right. It's like you have no right to kill an Israeli child, and you have no right to kill a Palestinian child. In all senses, it's racist. It's not right. So even if you're Israeli and you go ahead and kill a Palestinian, and even if you're Palestinian, you go ahead and kill an Israeli, it doesn't make sense. It's not right. The act of just killing a child, or not even a child, a human being in general, is just not right. And also...
briefly, Mr. He's making 3 points now, it's a bit...
Sorry, you said you wanted to know about the international war crimes that Israel is not pointing out. You wanted to know more about them. There was the white phosphorus is a war crime, and Israel used that. Also, their use of human shields is a war crime. Israel's collective punishment of all of Gaza is a war crime. Israel's target killing of children on the beach playing soccer is a war crime. And Israel's bombing of hospitals is a war crime. So the fact that Israel was created by the UN, and the UN hasn't done anything about this, I don't know if Israel should be even considered a state.
Thank you, Mr. I'll ask the proposition to respond first to those points. Who would like to take that? Yes, Mr. Smith.
I would sorry. I would agree with you on the basis of the refugees and the stuff like that. When it comes to the stuff that's talk about war crimes, the point is that when how I feel is that Israel is being attacked from a certain point, and then is reacting by attacking the Gaza Strip or West Bank, and it's doing that because it's being attacked by Islamist extremists who are then purposely positioning themselves in hospitals, like I just said, and then to avoid themselves being killed. And then if they're not going to if they're going to position themselves in a certain place, amidst their civilians, then there's going to be numerous deaths. That's just all I have to say. It's like if they didn't do that, then that wouldn't happen.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Who from the opposition would care to respond, Mr. Patton?
Oh, I've definitely got to butcher this. I want to address your second point first. I agree completely. Israeli blood, Palestinian blood, it's all human blood. We should try our best not to spill it. That is why we're on this subject. And to the point of war crimes, yeah, that's a lot of war crimes. From white phosphorus that I just got shown by the second speaker to the movement of Jewish settlers in the occupied areas of Palestine, to plenty of other examples. Now, I'm just going to respond to the points the proposition made. For every Jewish person killed, like the photos you've so thankfully printed out for us just to show us faces, there have been 10 Palestinian children starved to death. There have been 10 Palestinian teenagers beaten to death by Israeli Defence Forces. There have been 10 Palestinian people killed by a misplaced airstrike. We can't condone Israel with our support. Not when they act like this. Not when this is their goal, when this is how they behave towards the people they have absolute power over.
Thank you, Mr. Patton. I'll now go back to taking questions for the proposition. Are there any questions for the proposition? Ms. McQuillan.
You said in your speeches several times about how Israel has had amazing advances in healthcare and technology and caring for their citizens. What about the Holocaust survivors that the Israeli government siphoned funds that they were given for by the UN and other groups? What about all of those people who have been left in abject poverty?
Thank you, Mr. McGovern. Who from the prop would like to take that? Mr. Perry.
Yep, sure. Well, I think that is right. That Israel has become a leader in the world in advancements on healthcare. For example, I mentioned the rewalk for paraplegics and also that the irrigation system that they come up with. But I will address your point in one moment. I want to address what's the first name? Your point that you said that Israel is a state only for Jewish people. I never said that. I call Jerusalem pluralistic.
I
society.
stated that. I was bringing up.
Now back and forth, look at the time.
So I was calling Jerusalem a pluralistic city, and what I pointed out was that an Israeli Jerusalem is a city of tolerance, rather than in a region plagued by intolerance. So we never tried to suggest that it was Israel is purely only a state of Jewish people. Never tried. We actually suggested the contrary, and also. Mr. Murphy pointed out about the football team that were chanting anti-Semitic racist things, but surely the chants of the football team aren't representative of the government. Surely, that's saying preposterous. I mean, if you look at the Premier League teams in England, they're saying that Chelsea's representative of the Tory government, but I don't think so. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Who from the op would like to respond?
If David Cameron had been in the middle of Chelsea fans shouting Islamophobic or racist things, then it would be representative of someone from a government making racist remarks. So the fact that the Israeli culture minister is in the middle of the fans singing or seemingly going along with the singing of anti-Arabic, and let me just say this, right? I want to, because this is interesting. It's not just one minister. We have the Minister of Defence, who said after Operation Cast Lead, the next round is just a matter of time. The big problem is we have to make sure the next round is the last round. We saw, I mentioned Netanyahu saying that Israel was a land for Jews only. Only Jews would have rights in the land of Israel. We also have Oren Hazan, who's a member of the Likud party, an MP, boarding a bus of mothers who were going to visit their sons in Palestinian prisons, telling them he wouldn't ensure that they would never get back into Israel, that they would never be allowed to see their sons. We have another example of... I've lost my sheets and I have that many. Let me see, sorry, 1 second, if you could just humour me. That's not it. Sorry, it doesn't matter, I'll find it. But, you know, there's tons and tons of quotes from members of the Israeli government. Naftali Bennett is another example of someone who has consistently, you know, made anti-Arabic remarks. It's not just one minister, it's not an isolated incident, it exists in a context of continual Israeli ministers making anti-Arabic, anti-Palestinian remarks and glorifying in the killing of Palestinian civilians. When we look at after Operation Protective Edge or Operation Cast Out, whatever you want, you can see that that is an example, so it doesn't exist within vacuum. But just then very quickly to respond to your question, actually I completely forgot about it.
Talking about the fact that Holocaust survivors had the money actually siphoned by the Israeli government to support themselves rather than the actual people who were suffering.
Yeah, it was the last point you made. There was something else you made. I know there was something else.
No,
well, I mean, I'll let the proposition answer that one because I think it calls for them. But I just wanted to respond to the claim that you know it doesn't matter because it was at a football match. If David Cameron hadn't been doing it, I'd have called for his head as well.
There we go. Are there any questions for the opposition now? And before I take it, I'd like to remind both sides to actually answer the question. And not any previous ones. Thank you. I can't remember if I've let you speak already, Mr. Hickman, have I?
I think we've all spoken.
Mr. Hickman, then.
I'd just like to point to a couple of comments made, firstly by the first speaker for the opposition and actually just in the response there by opposition Webb. We're talking about the apartheid state of Israel as described by the first opposition, and as we've just heard there, a Jewish state in which only Jews have rights. If I may just remind the opposition, the actual proportion of representation in the House in Israel. We have so the population of Israel is estimated around about 74% Israeli and 26% Arab and other. That mirrors the proportion of Zionist to anti-Zionist to both non-Zionist Israeli but also Arab representation in the House. We also have, as we've heard referred to by both speakers of the proposition, I believe it was referred to in one of the POIs earlier, the point about an Arab judge who served on the Supreme Court for 14 years. Members of the opposition, how can you claim this is an apartheid state which is depriving people of their civil liberties, of their ability to represent themselves and beyond, when in fact they are not doing anything of the such? They are a democratic state who work with the proportional representation in the D'Hondt formula that we see in this very state we live in. It is very similar, and I don't think it's a fair statement to call it apartheid. If you call Israel apartheid, you're calling Northern Ireland apartheid.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Hickman. Mr. Murtagh from the Op to take that.
So it's an interesting point. Thanks for raising it because I'm very sceptical of the, you know, especially overusing Northern Ireland and South Africa as examples of what's happened in the Middle East. It's a particularly special circumstance. But on the issue of apartheid, order. Apartheid comes, as I'm sure many of you will know, I'll probably get this roundabout right, but from the Afrikaans meaning separate or separation. Well, I don't think the point of apartheid isn't necessarily relating to the whole of Israel. As you've mentioned, that there are issues within Israel that Arabs don't get the equal treatment as Jews within the state of Israel. There are points to be made there. But actually, when I think we're talking about apartheid, what we're actually talking about is the physical separation of Gaza from Israel, with the wall that surrounds, that Israel controls who goes in and who goes out, what goes in and what goes out. In that case, there is no more an example of separation in the strict word of apartheid than a separation wall that the International Court of Justice held 14-1 was also illegal under international law. So I think it's a case of not saying that Israel, like South Africa, is apartheid because it was, South Africa was the whole nation. What we're talking about when we talk about apartheid, particularly, is the treatment of the people in Gaza, and that is, in the strictest sense, separation, as apartheid is the etymology of the word in Afrikaans.
Thank you, Mr. Murtagh. Who from the proposition would like to respond to that? Mr. Vincent.
No, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I think so. If you're talking about Justice Salim Gibran, potentially, I think that's a great example. I think it clearly shows Palestinians and natural-born Palestinians, effectively, going into positions of real authority, real government power. And when it's not just the Knesset, it's also in the judiciary. It's in other branches of government. We see that this is not an odd thing. It's not a rare occurrence. This is Palestinians truly having their voices heard. And I think it's kind of a bit ridiculous when people start throwing around, as sort of was mentioned earlier, the whole idea of apartheid and stuff and locking down the Gaza Strip. Well, there's a very obvious reason why the Gaza Strip is being locked down, and that's because we keep talking about rockets, we keep talking about things being fired into Tel Aviv, places like this. It's just a classic example of a reason why, for military purposes, these places need to be locked down effectively. Now, I couldn't agree more on the sort of people talking about. I completely lost my train of thought. But yes, no, completely. I think Palestinians very much are engaging with democracy, and I think that's a great thing to see. And I think that over the course of years and years to come, I think the more that happens, the more that people have their voices heard democratically, the better the situation will get.
Thank you, Mr. Vincent. And now, unfortunately, as time is pushing on, we'll have to take the last question. Are there any abstaining points on the motion? A question that can be directed equally to both sides. Mr. Neal looks very enthusiastic, but I think I'm getting a death stare from Mr. Dobbin. I'm also getting a death stare scare. Dobbin.
So a lot of tonight has hinged upon examination of the status quo, so I'd like to ask both sides what the eventual impact they believe will be if their sides succeed. To the proposition, if they accept that we continue to lend our support to the Israeli government, how they'd address the lack of empirical evidence presented tonight, that the human rights abuses, actions in Gaza, their military abuses, that's not going to stop, and if that's something they're happy to lend their hand to. And to the opposition, where they've mostly focused, rightly so, on these same abuses, and I agree with you on that point, but the fact that you've not properly addressed that once we withdraw support from the Israeli government, that situation doesn't necessarily change, and no impact assessment has been provided of that. And if they're happy to say either that withdrawing our support does improve the situation, or if they're happy to admit that it won't improve the situation, and that's what you would say is your stance on it.
Thank you, Mr. Dobbin. I'll ask the opposition to respond first this time. Mr. Patton?
Obviously, because I lack a crystal ball and there's only so much that bottle of whiskey can make me see, I can't adequately say what the future may hold if we withdraw our support. The one thing I can say, withdrawing our support shows Israel and every other ally of the West around the world that your actions will have consequences. If you violate human rights, we will not keep giving you guns. If you bomb civilians, we will stop giving you bombs. And I really hope that one day becomes British government policy, because it really isn't at the moment.
Thank you, Mr. Patton. And finally, Mr. Perry.
I mean, Mr. Dobbin really hit the nail on the head. If once we withdraw support, there is no guarantee that things will get better. It's actually more likely things will get worse. So, I mean, the current Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he's in office now, but he won't be in office in 10 years' time. So, I mean, it is quite clear to say that if we withdraw support, either there could be a power vacuum in Israel, which could make the region even more unstable than it is. I think Israel being a liberal free democracy, it being a country that is relatively similar to Western countries, I believe that we should stand with Israel so we can work together with the Palestinians on a solution, rather than completely giving up on Israel. Even I think the Good Friday Agreement, the Northern Ireland, is a perfect example. That people never thought that Ian Paisley and Mark McGuinness would ever come together. I mean, I was reading a quote there. Ian Paisley once said, he said something like Catholics breed like rabbits. And imagine that he came together with Martin McGuinness and came to a solution. So I think the fallacy that they're pursuing, that the Israeli government, that we should give up on the Israeli government, is completely wrong. That we have to work with them to address these challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Perry. No, Mr. Murphy. Point of
It was an almost direct at me. I should have the right to respond.
No, sorry, not Mr. Murphy. I'm afraid, as we do try to get out of this room for about a quarter past, I'm afraid I must deny you that opportunity. I'm terribly sorry. Although I do believe the House would agree with me when I say that you did have quite a lot of opportunities this evening to speak. Yes. Right, so I would now, just to move us along, like to once again invite our guest chair, Professor Tony Gallagher, to give some closing remarks.
Well, I'll begin by saying that it's impossible to capture the richness of the debate, but I would like to commend all of the speakers, and particularly our three main speakers, for what has been a really extraordinary and interesting debate. Right at the very start, we heard that this was all about recognition, and Israelis seeking recognition for the state and for the right to exist. The reality is that the entire situation in the Middle East is about recognition for both communities. It's why, if you go to Jerusalem, the most political of academic disciplines is archaeology, because people are literally digging down into the bowels of the earth, trying to prove who was there first. That's happening in Jerusalem. That's the nature of the place. I don't know if any of you have ever seen probably the greatest documentary film ever made. It's a 9-hour documentary called Shoah by Claude Lanzmann. It's about the Holocaust. There's one of the scenes in the documentary where he speaks to a Jewish fighter who'd been in the war-torn ghetto at the time of the uprising against the Nazis. And as the Nazi forces were crushing the Jewish resistance groups, he was sent through the sewers out of the ghetto to try and get help in the rest of the city. And sometime later he came back through the sewers, went to where he had been fighting with his comrades, and they were all dead. And he walked around the ghetto trying to find other fighters, and everywhere he went, everyone he found was dead. And in the film, he says, at that point, I thought I was the last Jew in Europe. That existential feeling is really important. It's important to understand the impact of the Holocaust on Jewish consciousness, because there was a time in living memory when one group of people tried to literally wipe Jews from the face of the earth. And that influences the way the Jews in Israel think about their future. The first time I was in Israel, about 25 years ago, driving from Tel Aviv to Haifa, you could see the West Bank in the distance from the coast. The idea that a squadron of Jordanian tanks could cut the country in two and to begin a process of wiping it out looked realistic. 6 years ago, when I was in Israel doing some more education work, I was in Tel Aviv whenever 2 missiles came in from Gaza. The air raid sirens went off. We rushed to safety in under the stairwells of buildings, and the 2 missiles were intercepted by Israeli missiles. All of those factors play a role in helping to influence the way people think there. The question was asked, why are all the settlements built on the West Bank? Why are all the settlements built on the West Bank? The reason, in some senses, is very simple. It's about security. The reason why the settlers are put in different parts of the West Bank is to secure Israel from future attack. Because of that history and because of that sense of insecurity. That said, there is no doubt that the IDF is by far the most powerful army in the region. And the notion that even a combination of Arab armies attacking Israel could defeat the IDF now is crazy. The IDF is so powerful that that risk, in any realistic sense, has gone. But nevertheless, it's a feeling which is very strong within the country, and it's worth keeping that in mind. What we haven't done enough in the debate, and I think it's important, but it's a feeling which you find in many discussions about the Middle East. We talked about it as if it's a single problem, and it's not. There's the issue around the West Bank and Gaza, the occupied territories. That's a distinctive issue in comparison to the debate about Israel itself. What's happened in the occupied territories is in many respects appalling. Those days whenever I was in Tel Aviv and the 2 missiles came in and were intercepted, people in Tel Aviv were terrified. They thought that this was a potential harbinger of utter destruction. At the same time, the IDF was pounding Gaza to dust. The asymmetry in power between the two sides is absolutely unbelievable. And that's a reality that a lot of Israelis were not taking into account. Also, if you go into the West Bank, in some senses it feels like an open prison. The way in which it's carved up at the moment feels like Palestinians are crowded into small controlled areas. Within those areas they can do what they like, but their capacity, their freedom to move outside those areas is extremely limited. And that's not a long-term solution. So there are all sorts of problems and issues there as well. On the other hand, within Israel itself, 20% of the population, and growing, are Palestinians. Palestinians who stayed in Israel and accept they are Palestinian citizens within Israel. They've accepted that status. They are the people who are represented in the Knesset. They are the people we heard about who occupy the different civic and social positions within the country. There is no official discrimination against that community, but there is unofficial and indirect discrimination against that community. A lot of opportunities, a lot of rights available to Israeli citizens derive from their service in the IDF. Palestinians are not allowed to serve in the IDF. Not that they want to, but they're not allowed to. And because of that, they're denied opportunity, and that is a reality that needs to be taken into account. It was said that Israel is a democracy, and that's true. It's of all the countries in the region, it's the most vibrant democracy, although it is flawed. It does not work in a sort of fully fledged way, but then that's probably true of most democratic societies. And we heard many examples of extremist voices, claims about extremist voices on both sides, whether it's small parties in the Knesset or extremist groups within some of the Palestinian groups. It's always possible to look at small, atypical groups who say awful things and extreme things. That shouldn't be taken as the reference point for the communities as a whole, and it's worth keeping that in mind. The other issue, just about the missiles, it's important. The IDF, as I said earlier, is undoubtedly the most powerful military force in the region, and undoubtedly could resist any attack from any combination of the Arab countries. But the missile attacks in Israel indicate, I think, that is not sustainable in the long run. Technology is going to advance, missile technology is going to advance. There's the potential for all sorts of other weapons is going to advance. At some point, the strength of Israel, unless something is sorted out between the Israelis and the Palestinians in Israel, the Israelis and the Palestinians in the territories, and the Israelis and all the neighbouring countries, unless something is sorted out, at some point, that threat is going to return. And so there is an imperative to try and find a solution rather than trying to hold the line at the present time, because that in some senses is what is happening, and that in some senses goes to the heart of what this motion is about. If you look at the history of Israeli defence policy, depending on how you translate the term, it can be described either as the iron wall or the iron fist. The iron wall implies building a defensive power in the army that is so powerful that no one can attack them with any hope of success. On the other hand, the iron fist approach, embedded somewhere or other in the same policy, is that we will negotiate with anyone from a position of such strength that if they don't agree with the solution, we can crush them. And whether or not that's a sustainable approach in any longer term is a big issue. The action of the Israeli government at present is all geared towards safety for the state of Israel at this point. There's all sorts of bad things happen as a consequence of it. But if you accept that that's what needs to be done because there's no real prospect in the immediate short term of any sort of solution, then you'll support the motion. On the other hand, if that approach, if that action creates a permanently unstable region with a long-term threat for Israel, then you will oppose the motion. Because it may help, it may work right now, but will it work tomorrow, or next week, or next year, or in 10 years, or in 20 years? And that really is the dilemma of the motion, and that is your choice.
My deepest thanks to Professor Gallagher for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come here and chair this meeting this evening. Could I please get another round of applause for our guest chair? Alright then, now's the time to shuffle about for your membership cards if you haven't already. Just want to remind you that again, Saturday, film night, dates, time and location will be up by tomorrow evening at the latest, I do promise. Please come along, there shall be pizza and drinks. Otherwise, the debate next week is quite a special one. It is This House Believes Allies Have No Place in Queer Spaces. It is our somewhat traditional annual LGBT debate, and it is held in conjunction with QEB LGBT Plus Society, so that should be very good indeed. Mr. Bryson would like to say something?
I mean, there are spaces still on many of our debates. I can't promise you a place on everything. Some sides are full, but we have spaces on, I believe, every single debate yet. So if you want to speak, all 6 of these guys did a fantastic job tonight. If you want to replicate it, or if any of them want to speak again, please come to me. I am the man to speak to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson. Hey, mild scattered applause. So yes, we shall now move to the vote. This is a vote on speakerability. The motion this evening was this House would support the Israeli government. If you believe that the proposition spoke best this evening, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
I remind you, just who spoke best, not necessarily your opinion. Still, just the 1, 2, 3, 4.
I'll fight.
5, Mr. Secretary. Is that 6? Sorry, are you voting as well, Mr. Ryan? Mr. Smith, were you voting for yourself there, or were you just waving your pencil? 6 then, Mr. Secretary. All those who believe that the opposition spoke best this evening, please raise your hand and say nay! Nay. Keep them up so I can count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, Mr. Secretary?
I said 15 would be good enough.
Right. Sorry, raise your hands again. All those against or voting for the opposition. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17? 17, there we go. Thank you very much. And all those who would like to abstain on the motion, who have no particular opinion one way or the other, I wish to express no opinion whatsoever, please raise your hand, say it loud, say it proud, say meh! Meh! 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, Mr. Secretary. Hey! Mr. Secretary, if you could please pass your notebook over to our guest chair. Mr. Guest Chair, could you please read back the vote to me?
Yes, those voting for the speakers for the proposition was 6. Those voting for the speakers for the opposition was 17, and those who choose to abstain was 20.
Oh, well there we have it. The abstentions have it. The abstentions have it. So there you go, opposition and proposition. You both spoke equally well, or equally possibly, equally terribly. We'll never know. So yes, the time is now 9:25. We are adjourning to woodworkers, and I do hereby declare this meeting adjourned. Speakers for the photograph. Speakers for the front photograph.